All right, Laura, should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah, let's begin.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. My name is Kayla. I'm the Chief Customer Officer here at Kodiak. And Laura?
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm Head of Product here in Kodiak as well. It's really nice to be with you this afternoon one more time for a data webinar this time.
Yeah, exactly. So let's start off. Today's topic is all about curing data fatigue. So today we're going to look at, how to diagnose this, the burden of excessive data, how we can improve our decision making by being a bit more selective with our data. We're going to take a look at how to select the right indicators, as well as how to implement a data management regimen. So I think Laura's going to take us through the first part. How do we diagnose data fatigue?
Perfect. Yes, let's begin with the basics, I think, to define what is this and how to avoid it as much as possible. The first thing is like the definition of data fatigue is this feeling or this state of mental and emotional exhaustion that is quite overwhelming for the users, and that basically they cause this decision paralysis. You don't know how to move forward. You don't know what it means, and it makes the user not as effective at their job, and it can actually harm their well-being. The reason why this happens is because there's teams now, and there's so many tools that you can capture as much data as you want, but you don't have the time to process it. You don't have the maybe even the expertise to process that data. So it feels very overwhelming. It feels very messy and flawed. And of course, this can increase data fatigue. And of course, teams will struggle to analyze and use that data meaningfully. So that's why it causes data fatigue. To ask the question from Murad, yes, we are recording this webinar, and you will be able to, I believe, download it in the email that we will send you afterwards. So continuing with data fatigue, pretty much if you have a really good setup, just a specific number of data points or resources that you need to analyze, it's easier for the user to have actionable insights, right? It's easier for them to know what to do next. Instead, if you have too many data points, maybe the user doesn't know how to interpret those data points. They don't know how to start, and they get a little bit lost in the amount of data that is out there. If you have this type of complex systems, you require an advanced data analyst tools, maybe a very specialized user. Your headcount will increase. You need to make a concentrated effort on data quality as well, which is very time consuming and resource exhausting. And you will need to have more and more time both to analyze and to report on that data. So right now, these are your screen a little bit of what happens to a user when they have data fatigue. I'm not going to read them, all of them, but please see them, check them out. See if you have suffered this or someone in your organization has suffered from it. For example, decision paralysis is one of the biggest things that are provoked by data fatigue, as well as stress and anxiety. I think everybody can relate when they feel overwhelmed with numbers, but is this something that you are suffering in your day-to-day? We would love to hear from you, because depending on the answers that we get, we might continue giving this type of webinars and to know if this is something that we can help you in Kodiak. So let us know. There's going to be a poll that should be active at the moment about if you have experienced data fatigue. I know I have, especially with the amount of BI tools that you can get. What about you, Kayla? Do you see that? Have you experienced it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I was looking at your checklist before, and it said something about relying on the gut feeling instead of the data. Yes.
Yeah, that's actually quite common, I think, in stakeholders alike. It seems that our participants also feel a little bit of data fatigue, which is to be expected.
The yeses seem to have it so far.
The yeses seem to, and they keep increasing. This is good to know. We will try to make sure that our resources and the next webinars try to help you reduce that, at least when you're working in Kodiak. Perfect. Let's continue with the boarding of excessive data. I wanted to give you some numbers from a really, really good study made by Oracle about decision fatigue, but also data fatigue, and how they are related to each other. So the first thing is to know that data gathering analytics is actually really important. We're not here to tell you just don't ask questions, right? It's something that is actually key for your organization. 93% of all business leaders say that they need to have a system in place, because one of those decisions can break or make their success. And that's actually really true also for supply chain leaders. 94% they believe that the right data or insights can help them make better decisions. And 79% of those respondents believe that an organization that uses data-driven decision is more trustworthy and also more successful. So it is quite important to gather data and do the analysis. It's also how you can prove to your customers and to your stakeholders that you are being compliant, that you are being successful, that you have good practices in place. So the fact that it's difficult doesn't mean that we don't need to do it. But those respondents from Oracle, they also say that the amount of data that they're receiving is a little bit too much. So for example, 89% of the respondents believe that the number of data is growing so fast that has actually hurt them and the success of their organization. 72% of those also believe that the data is just helpful for IT professionals or data scientists, because of course of the complexity and the amount of information that it has. Also, 72% of the respondents admit that the sheer volume of data and the lack of trust has stopped them from making a decision, which are very concerning numbers, because we are seeing that all of this effort and time and money that companies are expending on gathering and collecting data is actually harming their stakeholders. And that's particularly important or a key in decision-making. 80% of the respondents say that the volume of data is making their decisions, making decisions in their personal life and also in their professional life way more complicated. Even 59% admit that they face this decision dilemma, that they don't know how to proceed at least once a day. 85% of people said that they have this inability of making decisions and is having a really bad impact on their life. It's causing anxiety, missing opportunities, and unnecessary spending. As well, 93% have changed the way they make decisions over the last 3 years. 39% only listen to sources that they trust, and 29% rely on gut feeling.
Laura, I don't know about you or our audience, but I'm feeling a little bit of fatigue looking at all of these metrics so far. How about you?
I know, Kayla, it is a lot. Imagine it's like we just saw 15 different metrics for the same topic. And this is how users and business leaders feel every single day. They have thousands or hundreds of different metrics or data points to describe one issue. And that's not effective because it doesn't stick. I am sure that I asked you about those numbers and it didn't stay with you because it's too much.
I was just thinking the same.
Yeah.
Please don't test me.
I will not. But I'm sure that the people who are here with us feel the same right now. It's just too many numbers. You don't know what is the important thing. Even if the data is correct, like in this case, and is describing the phenomenon that we're talking about, if you're just a rain of numbers and metrics, is not arriving to the purpose. So,
well, hopefully everyone on this call feels the same way. So let's move from that fatigue and take a look at how we can improve our decision making by being a bit more selective with our data. So to start with, we want to make sure that we centralize it, or as Laura likes to say, that we have one SRM to rule them all. We know, of course, that businesses across nearly every industry are struggling with the fact that there's some data in, an ERP system, in Excel, in emails. It's really hard to draw context from the data when it's so spread out. So we want to make sure that everything is stored in one place in order to drive those decisions. An example here, I got ahead of myself. Our example is on the next slide. So yeah, we want to make sure that everything is centralized in one place. Once we've done so, we want to make sure that we have processes in place for that data. So rather than asking users to make decisions without having a process in place, we want to make sure that we have things like red flags or indicators that they can lean on. An example here, let's say there's a health and safety violation. We want to make sure that everyone that sees this understands what the next steps are, and if the next step, for instance, is to implement a corrective action plan, they know how to do so. In line with that, we want to make sure that we're keeping it simple. So as Laura mentioned, it's never been easier to capture a lot of data, but it's very likely that of all the data that we're gathering and capturing, there are a few key indicators that really drive our day-to-day processes. So if we think about Kodiak, for instance, we have our rating scheme. We can, together with you, define sort of what an excellent supplier looks like versus a high-risk supplier based on your business criteria. And we can combine that with things like the red flags in the system so that when you're going through an approval process with a supplier, you can very quickly identify if you should continue with this supplier versus maybe choose not to based on these quick and key indicators that you establish. And really to follow this up, another reason to keep it simple, you might have some people that are considered data wizards on your team who are seasoned data analysts, but it's probably likely that you also have some people within your teams or your organization who are a little bit less seasoned when it comes to processing data or with statistical experience. So for instance, if we see that a supplier has, consistently struggled to deliver on time, that might be something that we want to make sure that there's a process in place for so that it's quite easy to see rather than having to go to a very comprehensive Power BI dashboard with some very complex heat map. You could instead have a notification in the platform that makes it very easy to identify, but also know what next steps to take. And last but not least, we want to be selective. So, coming from the US, more is often the way that we live our lives. But when it comes to data, it can certainly be the case that less is more, especially when you're trying to make a decision. So it's just something to keep in mind. There are several things that we probably need to be asking our suppliers in order to make sure we're compliant with the new legislation coming out. But it's also possible to ask this in a little bit more of a concrete way in order to drive the decision-making process. So we can see it here, right? On the left, plenty of questions, and there's certainly a need for them. But in order to really make an informed decision, it's probably a lot easier to do so with a question like this on the right-hand side. And it's also less fatigue for your teams as well as your suppliers. So it's also a way to drive supplier engagement as well.
Perfect. But how can we do this? What is the first steps that you need to take to actually select the right indicators? We have designed this very quick process for you to take home and analyze a little bit and see if you can start implementing this. You can be a seasoned user in our platform or a very, very new customer, that this is still very relevant. You need to review this type of processes now and then. So the first thing to start is that you need to outline your goals, your supplier relationship management goals. What are you looking for? And to do that, you should have as an input the company's strategic goals. What is your company looking for? Maybe your company is very focused on quality. If they are very focused on quality, those should be also your goals. Maybe they want to be net zero by the next year. So that also should be one of your goals. Companies can have several amount of objectives and goals. So it's also important for you to prioritize what is the most important thing that you want to focus on versus other topics that are also important, but not the prioritization. After that, try to identify the indicators or data points that are going to help you measure that success of those objectives. Please remember to look for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound indicators. So what we like to call SMART goals. After that, we do understand that not everything that is a data point is going to be an indicator. You might need to define what is compliance in your industry, what is the acceptance criteria for your company. And of course, for this, you need to do the legislation review. We do understand that is not something that you can do only with indicators and focus in one simple question. There are certain things that you need to review. But that doesn't mean that it has to be on your decision-making process. This is a bit different. So once you do the legislation review, you have your SMART goals, you can start setting up targets. What is good for you? What is your goal for your supply chain? After you set up those targets, let's start with communicating those objectives and KPIs to your stakeholders, both internally, but also your suppliers, for example. It is important to know what is the direction that you want to go, what is your values, your code of conduct, what is those important things that you want to execute in your day-to-day. After that, you need to define how you're going to collect all that data and start engaging with their suppliers, right? If you already had some data before, you can start doing the baseline. Until here is what you experience during the onboarding as well, and is what you define of what your plans are for your suppliers. But we also added this small part about engaging with the suppliers, because here's where it's important. How does your stakeholders know what is the acceptance criteria if you haven't defined it before? What do you do with all of that data that you're gathering if your stakeholders don't know what are the next steps? If they do know what are the next steps, they will be able to say, okay, this is a good supplier, we just put it as approval, nothing more to do. They might need improvement action, or you might decide not to work with them for any given reason. This is the continuous improvement loop that is so common in every management system. Always asking and reviewing those targets, right? Is this good enough? Where do we need to improve? Another iteration. And this is why I mentioned that you don't need to be on the onboarding phase to ask yourself these questions. You can be a seasoned customer with us, that you can still say, it's like, okay, I need to change or review my goals for this year. And this is how Kodiak can help you. First, you have the defined compliance acceptance criteria. You know, in the platform, we have the red flags and the ratings will make it really, really easy to identify those key points. Also, it's way easier for a user to analyze or rating areas and the global rating or the report rating that actually review all of those data points that you need to gather to be compliant. So take advantage of the rating scheme. It is designed to make it easier for you to move from a bunch of data points that you don't know how to interpret to a comprehensive system that your company sets up. Is your company the one who says this is more important than something else? This is a red flag and not something else. So this is a very easy tool for stakeholders to take decisions that remove their subjectivity. Additionally to that, we have the notification system, as you know, is quite robust and large. Please use this feature to send communications to those key stakeholders and help them in the process. You can actually set up in the description of the notification what are the next steps that the stakeholder needs. For example, If you set a notification because an ISO certificate is expiring, you can request to the stakeholder to do a follow-up with the supplier. So the stakeholder knows what to do with that specific data point. Additionally to that, we allowed, or because of the rating scheme, to analyze what is the best way to look for the supplier. What are the best ways to segment your system? And as you know, we have filters everywhere in the platform, especially in the supplier list, which is one of the things that our customers use the most. You can find the suppliers depending on those properties and attributes. You can filter in advanced filtering by the attribute responses or with property filters. Talking about data fatigue, you might not want to see all of those suppliers all the time. So you can set a specific filter and save a preset list so you can only focus on those suppliers that you are in charge of. If you want to set up those preset lists, we have a really good resource center in the platform. So you just need to search there as the step-by-step approach on how to set those lists. Additionally to that, we help you establish your acceptance criteria. And the way we do that is with the flexibility of the rating scheme. You can say, okay, A, B, C, what is more important for me? What is good enough? What is at risk? So if you take care of every single question that you want to include in your decision-making process, or you include on those rating schemes, and define what is good enough and what is not good enough, you will be able to inform the user and the stakeholders what is an acceptance criteria for your specific company. Additionally to that, talking about communication is extremely important, but also follow-up and auditing. When you communicate with internal stakeholders or the supplier, you can do this throughout the action module. Now we have the action log history, so you will know exactly what happened at what time and by which user. This is a very good tool for auditing purposes. So in the future, when someone comes knocking at your door and you want to know how is your approval process for suppliers, you can just pull the action where you approve the supplier and see a step-by-step approach. So that's really good for reporting, but also for your stakeholders. Even if you have a process that you execute on a regular basis, the user needs guidance. People tend to forget important steps when you don't have them write it down, even if you do it every single day. You tend to jump steps because of any given reasons. Thanks to this module, you will have a log where the user has to give the responses, have to give the decision, and of course, you have the tool to prove it in the future or to review it in the future as well. Additionally to that, you start need to creating all of those tools to collect your data. With Kodiak, you don't need more Excel or emails, everything in one, everything all lost in the amount of data and communication that you have. Everything will be centralized in one place in a very easy way to respond. As you know, we try to make the assessments with only one link, no login for the supplier, so they can come along and just answer and send those links to other stakeholders. You can also have your own content, right? You can create everything in one place. And this is a tenet for us in Kodiak. If we are talking about defining your own goals and making the tools that you need to capture that data, it's very important for us that you can do that in our platform, that you have that freedom and that governance. And then, of course, you can engage with your suppliers in very easy ways. You just send that campaign and you can very easy follow up where they are in the process, resend them if you need to reach out to them because something happened, something got lost. And this is true not only for suppliers, but also for auditors or stakeholders if you're using KP Insight. Finally, or not finally, is part of the process in a continuous way, is reaching out or checking out your baseline. And this is something that when you don't have any history or any data, you need to start from scratch at the beginning. But if you do, make sure that you have a visualization of that historical data is quite important. And with Kodiak, you can do it very easily. You have the history chart that you can do it by supplier in the supplier scorecard. Or in analytics, you can filter by categories, segmentation, so you might want to see your entire supplier base. Additionally to that, of course, improvement actions. This is something that you can do in the actions module as well. You can communicate with your suppliers and improve together, have that conversation and that back and forth. And finally, something that I think is my favorite step is the fact that you can always keep track of your suppliers, where they are, what they're doing in your process. So if you establish the process and you establish a segmentation for your process, your stakeholders will know what is missing, what is happening with the supplier, especially if you have a process with a lot of decisions in it. This type of segmentation is really important to basically keep tabs on the supplier. Good. So let's talk a little bit about how are the following steps and what is the main thing that we want for you to go with in this webinar. The first thing is think about the end path. Who was going to use these outputs that you're going to create? We have this feeling that many, especially with these numbers that we have seen from this article, that many people go from the data first, they invest on data analysts, they invest on Power BI or any BI tool, create this amount of information, and then they think about their goals and processes. And this is very true because in this Oracle report, they actually said that 78% of business leaders often make the decision and they check the data just to justify those decisions. And that's not a very reliable way of working. You might find yourself making a decision that is not justifiable by the data that you have. And yes, you can manipulate data, modify it in ways that it will help you justify them, but that's not the correct process. What we recommend is for you to see your goals and your processes. Think about who are going to execute those goals and processes, and then create the outputs. It could be charts, it could be reports, but it also can be recommendations and ways of working in the platform, for example, with notifications. So we have said it before, but we will say it again because this is extremely important. Think about your target audience. Who is going to read those resources? Who is going to use those charts? Are there professionals? Are there enthusiasts? Or they don't know how to interpret data? Then also think about the most effective way to present that information. Not even if you have a data analyst, a seasoned data analyst with all of the tools that you have, you might not want to make a very complicated chart to communicate an information. Think about how is the most effective way to move forward. Finally, education. Users need to understand what they're executing. They need to learn about your own processes. If you don't have a process, create them with them so they can execute. And as I mentioned, even if you have a data analyst, it's important for them to understand the background of those charts and reports. What does it mean if a supplier is preferred versus if it's critical? Or what does it mean if a supplier has been blocked? So this is very important at every step of the way as well. There are pretty much two different types of charts, let's put it that way. Exploratory charts. Those are the charts that data analysts use to explore and crunch the numbers, basically, see the 360 of the data and try to find more patterns of behavior of what's really going on. And they're really successful. We use them quite a bit in our internal processes as well, but they might actually hide some insights. And they are not easy to understand. It takes time to understand them. They're not really good communication tools. explanatory charts on the other side. These are what we call a traditional chart, right? It's the line bar, the pie chart. They're very straightforward. Users know often they don't need help interpreting those charts. And they're easy ways for them to understand what's going on. Nonetheless, I want to remark that charts are not the only way to communicate a data point. You have other tools. You have the scorecard, you have the status, you have the supplier list. And this is true for other platforms or other tools that you have as well. Don't think horses, don't think zebras. If you can communicate something with one single data point, why would you do a chart? Simplicity. And last but not least, we had a whole webinar about this, but this is extremely important for data fatigue. Users tend to lose interest in a data set that is not reliable or accurate, that might be incomplete, that might have all data points, that it maybe is not relevant for their use case. So maintaining data sets is quite a bit of piece of work that you need to do, but it's extremely important for you to harness the value of the platform and the data set. Good. Just to finish it up.
Yeah, so this is a quote we really enjoy here at Kodiak by, I believe it's a Dutch mathematician. Simplicity is a prerequisite for reliability, and having reliable data is certainly a prerequisite for making more informed decisions down the road. So with this, we want to thank everyone so much for attending today. If you do have questions, please put them in the chat. We will hang back for anyone that would like them answered. And thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it seems that we don't have any questions, so thank you, Sandra.
Yes, thank
you.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. I think we can say have a nice day and a great weekend ahead when it's time. Bye.
Bye.